So we are returning back from closed session, and we have nothing to report out of closed session. So I will call the general meeting to order. Do I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Spokley.
Here.
Dowden Calvillo.
Present.
Riddell Harris. Here. Mayor Amara.
Present. Thank
For the
you.
record, Councilmember Berlant will be absent this evening.
Thank you very much. And we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mayor's commendations, proclamations, acknowledgements, and announcements. The introduction of our new Auburn Police Department employees. Chief Canam.
Well, good evening, Mayor Amara, City Council members.
I don't think.
Is this thing? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Kind of. Well, again, good evening, Mayor Amara, City Council members. My name is Ryan Cannon. I am the Chief of Police here for the City of Auburn. And tonight, I have the pleasure of getting to introduce a couple more of our new employees over at the Auburn Police Department. And you think at this point, like we've doubled in size, but we haven't. And, you know, with reserves and our professional staff, dispatchers, you know, they all play a huge role in our daily accomplishments and everything that we're actually able to get done. And a lot of the stuff that they do is behind the scenes. It's very easy to see the sworn staff, the full-time officers driving the cars, foot patrols, and doing all that good stuff. But a lot of the folks that we have at the police department they are behind the scenes and are getting a lot of the work done. First, I would like to introduce Bryant Correa. Bryant was born in San Jose and moved to Sacramento when he was young. While living in Sacramento, he attended Rosemont High School and graduated from the Leadership and Enrichment through Academic Development in 2018. After high school, he attended the Post-Basic Academy at Los Rios, Sacramento Regional Public Safety Training Center. And then in October of 2019, he applied with us as a reserve officer. He was successful. He's been a level 3 and a level 2 reserve officer for us for some time. And in November of 2019, he graduated from the academy. In May of 2020, he was hired as an Auburn Police Department level 2. And as a level 2, he would drive around with one of our full-time officers. He's investigated crimes ranging from theft to domestic violence. And during his time as a reserve, he was awarded the life-saving ribbon. In June of 2022, he was transferred to the Communications Center and was chosen to be a public safety dispatcher for the city of Auburn. So Bryant here is currently in training with our communications dispatchers now. Our next reserve officer, we can clap if you'd like. Scott Bergenstock moved to Auburn in December of 1999 with his wife, Lori. They raised 2 children, Lauren and Tim. He's employed with the Placer County Assessor's Office for 20 years as a senior appraiser with hopes of retiring soon. What does LOL mean? No, I'm just kidding. He enjoys fishing and camping with friends and family, and he has always had an interest in law enforcement, however, never pursued it as a career. In 2016, his wife started working with Mothers Against Drunk Drivers and local law enforcement, which led to many ride-alongs and also boat-alongs, right? Yeah, he did a few, all right. I'm trying for a boat, any waterway. Both here in Auburn and throughout Placer and Sacramento counties, this increased his interest. Through his volunteer work with MAD and becoming a volunteer with the Auburn Police Department a year ago, he decided he no longer wanted to stand on the sideline as a civilian. He investigated what he should do and what needed to be done to become a reserve police officer for the Auburn Police Department. First step was the academy, and it just so happened that an academy class was coming up in the spring of 2022, which he completed. He was sworn in as an APD reserve officer on May 2nd, 2022, this year. So congratulations to Scott. But I still have Scott up here. So, you know, employees of the month isn't always just the people that are full-time employees for us. You know, like I just mentioned, we have a lot of people who are behind the scenes, a lot of people who are volunteers that make everything possible. And Scott was named the Officer of the Month for June 2022. Scott has supported the Auburn Police Department's impact efforts through data mining and providing assistance in DUI enforcement efforts as a cover and transport officer. Officer Bergenstock regularly volunteers his time to participate and represent the Auburn Police Department at several community events. And along with last year in June, he played a huge role in helping us get a lot of the information we needed for our MAD efforts and DUI efforts. So Scott is hereby awarded the Auburn Police Department's Officer of the Month ribbon for his exemplary work in having a high level of integrity, dedication to service, and professionalism. Amy, you want to take a
I
picture?
was going to shake your hand.
Sure.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
And one more thing. So on July 19th, the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers Northern California recognized law enforcement's efforts really across almost the entire Northern California for their arrests made with DUIs, with the community efforts. And we just so happens that Lori Birkenstock, Scott's wife, is the lead for that program. And, we have a great relationship with MAD. And for those that don't know, so his last, really starting in October of last year, we started increasing our DUI efforts. And not just making arrests, but finding ways to reduce impaired driving before it even starts. We partnered with our transit program when they kicked off the on-demand, and really, we've been really driving that resource with our businesses. We met with a number of the local businesses here in the city of Auburn to develop kind of an ability to really to talk to them and develop that relationship and express the fact that as law enforcement, we're not out to get their businesses. We're not there to shut them down or anything else. We're there to be partners. And it was through that partnership that as that continued to grow, the state also has what they call as responsible beverage service training that became mandated. So Sherry Harris worked with the Chamber of Commerce, worked with alcohol beverage control, and we coordinated that training here in the city of Auburn. I think we had about 80 people attend between service clubs and local businesses. And, we've been driving, Menjel and his crew developed with that on-demand program, the QR codes, those have been going to all the businesses. So this really has been all about partnerships and, addressing a problem that we've had, and not just us, but, across this country. And we say DUIs are actually 100% preventable. And, with that, it was actually a pretty awesome opportunity. But on July 19th, the Auburn Police Department, your Auburn Police Department, actually got the inaugural, so the first ever outstanding police agency for their efforts. So Matt actually had to create an award just for all the stuff that our team is doing. So congratulations, our team. And again, thank you for all your support. Very much appreciated it. And from the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We really do.
Thank you, Chief
appreciate
Canam, and welcome to the new employees. And congratulations on your certificates. And so with that, we will go to the consent calendar. Oh, excuse me, approval of the agenda. This is the time set aside for council members and or public to ask for removal, postponement, or a change to the listed sequence of an agenda item. The agenda will be approved by a consensus of the council. Do I have any changes to the agenda by council or public?
I'll move approval of the agenda as proposed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that will keep the agenda as proposed. Consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless persons request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the motion to approve the consent calendar. And as I always say, the consent calendar has items on it that the city council has seen and or have discussed in a lot of detail with the city manager and staff. But with that being said, I would like the city manager to please go through each of these briefly.
Mayor and Council, 7 items on the consent calendar tonight. Item 1 is every 2 years, we update our conflict of interest code. What that does is identify positions within the organization which are required to file with the FPPC and disclose any types of conflicts. inevitably, everybody gets to fill out what they call a Form 700, which is a disclosure. Item 2 is a resolution adopting our projects list for SB1. SB1 is an additional gas tax that's provided in the state. We are required to, it comes out to about 2 times a year. We adopt a resolution to be able to submit our project list to the state of California. We're doing that in this resolution. Item 3 is an amendment to our current operations contract with OMI regarding our wastewater treatment facility. In this amendment, it's doing a couple of things. First, the Department of Industrial Relations has come down with some new wage and hour requirements regarding certain tasks that are done within the scope of the operation of the wastewater treatment facility. The amendment goes through and it amends the section of the contract regarding that so that we're in compliance. And then the second thing it does, and this is in concert with our asset management program, we're manipulating some of the hours that are used on both the maintenance of the collection system and the video inspection that we're doing. Item number 4 is a deed of reconveyance. What this item is, the city has had funds from the state. They're called program income or economic development grant funds. We had done a silent second on a first-time home buyer loan. They've repaid us. So the money basically comes back into the pot. EDBG funds have a pretty wide use. In this case, we have about 300,000. So we're going to wait for that to grow and come up with a program. Item number 5 is staff's asking that the council adopt a resolution receiving grant funds of about $178,000 from the state of California. This is a per capita grant fund that comes through an overall initiative that provided money for park development. In this, staff's asking 2 things. One is that the council authorize a resolution accepting the funds. And then the second is we'll do a pretty robust public process. For us, we really only have one city park, which is the school park preserve, that would qualify under this. We're going to go out. We're going to hit the main stakeholders regarding the school park preserve and bring back recommendations to the council on the use of those. And some of the people that want to participate will be some of the service organizations. So I think this will be a great process. Item number 6, we have taken out the lawn in front of the Martin Fire Station. And Placer County Water Agency, for us getting rid of the lawn, has given us about $6,000. So we'll use that for something different. And then finally, item number 7 is the adoption of job descriptions and a pay schedule for the position of management analyst. The council authorized 2 of these positions, one in the city manager's office. The second is in the community and economic development department. The one in community and economic development will be working on airport management issues. That will also be working on grant funds from the FAA. The one in the city manager's office will be working on strategic plan implementation projects, as well as going after grants. And that is the consent calendar.
Thank you very much. So do I have anyone who would like to pull any item, or do I have a motion?
Is there any public comment?
Is there anyone from the public that would like to add anything to this? Okay,
Madam Mayor, I'll move approval of the consent calendar as proposed.
I'll second. Councilmembers Fogler.
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris. Aye. And Mayor Amara.
yes, thank you very much. So public comment. This is the time provided so that the public may speak to the council on any item not on the agenda. Please make your comments as brief as possible. The council cannot act on items not included on this agenda. However, the items will be automatically referred to staff. Council members also have an option to speak on any item not on the agenda at this time. So I will start with City Council. I just have a couple of things that I would like to bring up before everybody gets tired and doesn't want to listen to us anymore. This past week, we had the opportunity to meet up with the Truckee Coalition, Truckee Council, and collaborate. And myself, our city manager went all the way up to Truckee. Jonathan Wright went all the way up to Truckee. And Mike Lundberg, who's the sustainability president and on the planning commission, went up. And I was very impressed at the time and energy that they did going all the way through the traffic up to Truckee to meet with their mayor, planning commission, head of transportation department, and a city council member. So the purpose was to discuss their bike share ride program, which they are in the process of implementing, and which also they have experience. They've spent about a year working on this, and they have they will be implementing it very soon at no cost to the city. So they shared with us not only their contract with the company. They had 17 organizations who submitted bids for when they put it out to bid, and they shared that. They shared their site plans with us, and they also shared their bid and their contract. So it was an opportunity to talk to them also about various other topics, including workforce housing, fire issues, and several other opportunities to ask them questions about how they conduct business. And they asked us questions. They were very impressed with our microtransit program, our on-demand bus. And so the collaboration, I thought, was very good, and we intend to keep it up in the future if we could. And I think it, again, why reinvent the wheel? So we went up there and took the opportunity. Again, they have a transportation manager there who has a lot of experience. He came from Park City, Utah, and he's very enthusiastic and shared a lot of very valuable information. Then I don't want to steal the thunder from Chief Canan, but we received information, and I think this is still occurring, and if it's not, Chief Canan can correct me, but on Saturday, August 6th, there's going to be a gun buyback program in Auburn at 8 a.m. to 11 Auburn City Hall parking lot. And Chief Canan went to a lot of trouble and did a very thorough and excellent job. Chief Canan and the staff. And I don't want to bore you, but I do want to tell you a couple of things and the importance of it. The APD is continuing their effort to increase community outreach and awareness, and they want to make our city safer. And in response to requests and concerns, they scheduled the very first gun buyback program for the city of Auburn. And and I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and I'm going to try and just briefly say some of the procedures that'll occur on that day. So firearms must be obviously at the day of arrival, unloaded and locked in their trunk, and they will bring it in that day. They will pick it up, and they will have gift card, which are limited, but they will receive a gift card in exchange. What is a gun buyback program? A gun buyback program is an opportunity for members of our community to turn in unwanted firearms voluntarily, typically anonymously with no questions asked, and they may receive some form of compensation. The goal for the gun buyback program is to provide service to our community that will raise awareness of gun violence, and create a dialogue that will ultimately make our city safer. So do gun buyback programs work? Well, the short answer is it may or may not. Many studies and information are held on both the success and the failure of it, but the success, obviously data shows that removing unwanted firearms that are not adequately stored has a higher potential to reduce gun violence in homes. On a larger scale, the success of gun buyback programs is less known. because it doesn't happen frequently. We can also remove one, if we can remove one firearm from the streets and potentially prevent a gun from being stolen and hurt someone in the future, then our goal is accomplished. Do gun buyback programs prevent criminals from obtaining guns? The one objective of the program is to limit the firearms that are not adequately stored in homes. Data estimates roughly 50% of firearms used in crimes are stolen from law-abiding citizens or illegally obtained. There are 500,000 guns that are stolen each year from homes where firearms are not stored properly. People turn in old and non-working guns. We require functioning firearms when they come in. The trained staff will inspect each weapon to ensure it's operable, and they will not provide payment for non-working guns. However, they will help them dispose of them. So what happens to the guns when they're turned in? Typically, the guns received are destroyed. Most commonly, guns are melted down, the scrap metal is recovered. So again, thank you, APD, for doing this. And if it helps keep our city safer, then I think we've accomplished what we're set out to do. So thank you for your hard work on that. And if there's anyone else from here?
Yeah, since we are talking about Auburn Police Department, just a
Yes.
quick announcement that we have National Night Out on August 2nd at 6 p.m. and that will be in Old Town Auburn. So lots of fun festivities and information from the police department. We used to actually go out into neighborhoods during the National Night Out. It was fire and police, and we'd go to different neighborhood watch parties and so forth and meet with folks and talk about ways to protect ourselves. So anyway, now the party's moving to Old Town. So hopefully we'll see folks down there on August 2nd.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone from the public have any public comment? Okay, with that being said, we will go on to the airport fee schedule. Jonathan, conduct a public hearing and a resolution to adopt the new airport fee schedule.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Jonathan Wright, Community and Economic Development Director. Here to talk to you about, well, not entirely fees, but a rate schedule. Okay, let's do this right. Where do I need to point it? Next. All right, so how did we get here? Last fall, when I first started working here, we did some outreach and some engagement with the airport community. One of the major concerns they had was transparency of rates. I don't know how many here can tell me how much tie downs are out there without looking at your staff report. You can't because it's not published anywhere.
I don't know.
So I used to have to call over to Threshold because when I first got here and remind me what the fees are because it's not published anywhere. And then how much do things cost? And really that was a question about reversion. What happens at the close of a lease and what does that really look like? And so taking that to heart, went back to the city council in February, received funding to get a appraisal done, which kind of started this ball rolling. Hit the next one, please. So as provided to you in your council packet on the 28th, the assessment that was done by Integra found that we are significantly lower in fees. Granted, I'm just like everybody else, and I don't dig fees or fee increases, but when you're 40% lower than even adjacent airports, you're pretty much giving away the farm. And we're looking at a lot that's going to happen in the future. So the land lease there, I just want to point out, you can't see the little footnote there, but that was actually the highest land lease I could find. So it's still at the highest rate that we had. And this is not including the most recent one for the East End Airport or the east end of the airport. We were still 24% low. So everything beyond that would just further increase that percentage difference because all the other ones were even lower per square foot than that one. So next, please. So why are we doing this? Well, we have a lot of things planned. Since I've been working out at the airport, we have put a lot of time into some fairly lofty goals. Putting a runway extension into place is going to be a multi-part project. Replacement of the airport terminal building or upgrade of the terminal building is going to be a major issue and cost to the city. Just regular runway maintenance and taxiway maintenance is also factored into that. A lot of those surface treatments are getting old and they have to be addressed. So this is actually from the FAA. So what we're required to submit to them, it's a 7-year comprehensive CIP plan. And so next slide. If you calculate everything at today's cost, that's an $18 million CIP. And of course, we all know that today's cost is increasing almost daily. So it's not just that cost, but we also increased the FTE at the airport. So we're looking at the addition of new personnel there. There's some deferred maintenance items. Recently we fixed the roof on the terminal building, but we didn't fix a lot of the rain damage from inside. I mean, if you go in there, you can clearly see that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. There's still crack sealing that needs to happen out on the ramp in the tie down area. There's still weed abatement that we have to work on. So all those things aren't factored into that $18 million price tag there. And of course, there's the current fees that we have that at least we've been informed of don't include all the fees that we should be charging for out at the airport. And not that it's a reason to increase rates, but the last time that we could find that tie downs were even looked at was in 2003. So almost 20 years ago. Next slide. Thank you. All right. So this is basically throwing it all out on the table so that we have a comprehensive cost assessment for each type of service or amenity that we provide out there at the airport. And really with the tie downs, like the daily tie downs, it didn't increase a lot. And that was based off of the assessment looking at other similarly situated airports. That wasn't from the Integra Realty Resources piece, but I'll go into that a little bit more here in a minute. But then the tie down monthly space was from Integra. Some of the helicopters, we don't even accommodate helicopters out there. There's no fees for parking. There's no fees for usage. And yet we have 6 to sometimes more out there on any given day, not paying the city anything for the use of the airport. And of course, those are heavy aircraft, just like a large twin engine airplane would be. It has wear and tear on all our surfaces. Also, since we're putting in a new helicopter parking area, granted, we have some emergency services folks that we're going to make sure get a piece out there, but we also have the opportunity to do longer term leases for helicopters. So that's been accommodated in there. Aircraft storage. So that's another long-term goal. That's to create an area out there at the airport where derelict aircraft, ones that aren't airworthy, that can't be made airworthy within a reasonable amount of time, aren't just occupying space on the ramp. As everybody knows, we have an extensive list growing of especially twin engine, but single engine tie down spaces. So that would allow people, or once we have a policy in place, which is forthcoming, we would be able to move those off the active ramp and put them into storage. Now, you notice the storage fees are actually higher. That's to provide them incentive to actually work on the aircraft rather than just sticking them out somewhere and letting them sit there. It also provides us with a mechanism that we can do cost recovery more rapidly should we want to lean the aircraft to recover cost to basically make something happen with that aircraft. So that's pretty important. Now the long-term leases, so you have the ground lease there, that's the same price that we quoted or we did for the East End hangar section. That's based off the Integra ground lease appraisal that they did. Then the box hangar and the T hangar right below that, that's really important because that's what's now telling folks out at the airport at which time reversion will occur. That would be the current cost today. Now, this is going to be up to the city to keep up on these costs and regularly review them to make sure they're contemporary. But everybody knows they're getting a fair shake. They know exactly how much it's going to cost, and that we've done an assessment based off of a third party that has brought in information and tells us this is how much our current market rate should be. The terminal building office space, as you can see over there, the current rate's kind of all over the place. But $1.50 a square is what is going for retail space, or excuse me, office space in town right now. So that's why it was assessed. Now, keep in mind, none of the current leases are changing. So even though this is going to pass today, as long as the lease is in effect, whatever the current term is or provisions in the lease, they stay the same. So like with the terminal building there, none of our tenants are getting a rate increase or anything's changing there until such time as the lease expires, they move out, and then the next tenant comes in, and that would be based off of the a new lease agreement. And then down below that, we have the costs. Now, again, this is something we're already doing. Those deposits are something that we already handle as staff, but nowhere is it published. So nobody knows that unless they come into my office and I have to explain the process. So again, it's for transparency purposes. Now, that's just a deposit. That's for cost recovery. So it in essence isn't a fee because we're only charging for the service that we're providing. So they give us the deposit, and should there be funds left, the funds are reimbursed at the end of whatever that action is that they're requesting. It's outlined there. The only one that has a defined lease amount, or excuse me, a defined fee, is the $50 for sublease assignment. And that's because we get those quite frequently. So you have master leases out there that then get parceled out into different hangars and they get sublet. Well, just like our tenants, we do a review of those. That review requires legal, that review requires city manager's time. It requires my time to meet with the people to make sure that what they're doing meets the intent of our airport, our FAA obligations, as well as the lease obligations. So that if you were to take a deposit, it would actually take more money to do the cost factoring to get to figure out how much it was. So that one we did as a flat rate. And you can see on the staff report there's actually a breakdown of what those costs would be paying for. The rest of them down below there, you'll see same on the right-hand column. That's because we're not changing anything. We're just memorializing what we currently charge, because again, it's in no place that can be found, at least by the public. So this provides as much transparency as possible. The only thing down the very bottom there, you'll see derelict aircraft removal. When we have to deal with an aircraft based off a policy that will be forthcoming again, we need to be able to charge for it. And we want to be able to have an established rate that at least shows that we do charge for these types of things. If we have to deal with your aircraft, you have to pay us for the cost to deal with it. So simply gets those things out in the open. Anybody have any questions at this point on that? Okay, there's not a lot of change. Yeah, the biggest thing is the tie downs, but again, that really was because we are so far behind. Where are you going now? Okay. In order to get the rates that weren't established by Integra, I mean, I literally poured through everybody's fee schedule all over the nearby countryside here. And so you have Lincoln. Oh, thank you. I can almost read it.
We got to look at it on our.
So you have Lincoln, and for daily tie downs, they're charging $8. We're proposing them at $7. And their their monthly tie downs are at 75. And of course, we're just slightly below that. Next slide. But if you look at Grass Valley actually does it a little different. They do it on a per square foot cost. And according to their airport manager, their average monthly rate is around 60, which is slightly lower than ours, and their overnight's about 5. So you have them kind of all over the board. Now the next one is Placerville. It's actually, there you go, stay there. That's fine. There you go. Placerville actually does a really good job because they account for helicopters and a lot of the things that we have out there. So I use some of their information, but they're also slightly higher than our tie down costs are. And again, we're trying to be sensitive to our current tenants and our current users of the airport, because we really haven't done any rate increases for quite some time. So this is something that, in the next year, 2 years, we'll go back and look at and make sure that we're not falling too far behind on this. But you can see that our costs are pretty close to theirs. And then the next one. And then you get to Truckee. And I just can't explain Truckee. They did good for them. So yeah, their overnight parking starts at $16 and it goes up to $800 depending on the size of your aircraft. Their monthly fees are $95 starting up to $480 depending on the size of your aircraft. So there is a big difference. I kind of wanted to show the far end of the spectrum because I had to look at that and go, wow, But you can see that all the different airports in the area charge kind of a different rate. So really trying to find that baseline and what works for our community and not being overly ambitious with our fees was the goal for putting this together. And again, it's a lot of it's about transparency and having everything in one place so that we can publish that. People that come to the airport or are interested in the airport can have one-stop shopping to look at what those things are going to cost them. There's no surprises, and we can point to it. That was passed by resolution then, and this is what it is, unlike what we currently have. Next. Important to you, just like it is to me, is outreach. We want to make sure that we're doing things and it's in the interest of the airport community and that they are aware that we're doing this. So in March, the Integra report was distributed to certain members of the airport, some of the 5AC members, as well as some folks that were interested in the airport itself, just to get a feel. And the response was, it looked like those numbers were on par. So on March 28th, as you know, there was an informational item that was put in your council packet that was also public. I used that information and published it on the March AAA newsletter, and you can actually see there's a copy of the page there. I know you can't read it, but you can still see the spreadsheet there that was still in your council packet, and then there's a narrative there telling people that, hey, this is how far behind we are and things are going to change. Fees were also discussed at the April 5th 5AC meeting, in which they were notified that we're going to look at, or I was looking at putting together a very comprehensive fee schedule. And then that draft fee schedule that you actually have in your packet was distributed to them on July 7th. And then, of course, the notice for the public hearing tonight was also published public. I know it says questions, but I do want to run down because undoubtedly somebody's going to ask about FAA requirements. And FAA does require that we have certain parameters for our fees. They basically have three categories that we're supposed to meet with them. One is that they're fair and reasonable. So that's why going through all the analysis and study, we can show that we're not charging anything different. In fact, if anything, we might be on the conservative side of fees. They can't be used to discriminate against anybody. So by having a published fee chart and an open airport, everybody's aware of what the costs are for usage. So that doesn't in no way changes. We're not charging anybody different for one user to the next. And lastly, we have to establish fees that make the airport as self-sustaining as possible. And of course, keeping up with current market values and what other people are charging is a way of recovering those costs. And again, we have a huge list of projects out there, maintenance items, and some new folks that'll be coming on the team here that are going to really build the capacity. And so this will help recover that cost. Now, I know in the staff report, the initial estimate's around $40,000. That was just looking at what for the next year, we're probably going to see as far as turnover and the increase with the tie downs. If somebody's got a tie down lease in place and it's good for the next 6 months, I say we honor that 6 months. And then at the end of it, when they have to renew, then we'll go ahead and it'll be the new fee. So it's going to kind of gradually ease in. It's hard to tell what the real dollar amount is going to be in the end, but we do know that our fees will be contemporary and that those costs will go directly back into the airport enterprise fund. So any questions?
Anyone have any questions before I open up for public comment?
No
Public hearing?
questions.
No question.
Go ahead.
Couple quick ones. How do you plan to make them available? Are we going to have like a pamphlet that we make that we keep out there? Is it going to be on a website? It's one thing to have it in a staff report somewhere deep, buried deep, but how do we plan on socializing it?
So I was planning on putting some laminated ones over at the Pilot's Lounge because that's where they use it.
Yeah.
And then on the airport website where it's easily accessible.
Okay. How often should we be updating this?
So we should be looking at it, especially with inflation, every year.
Okay.
Honestly, just to see how far we're getting behind. I know that other airport managers do that. They kind of call around. I get the calls, what are you guys charging?
Mhm.
And then we should hire somebody like Integra every 5 years at least to look at that, to look at the ground lease fees as well as the improved lease fees. So
We'll just put it on our calendar every year to just kind of look at the fees again. Okay. Who's going to be, or how are we going to be going about following up to make sure that we get all of the fees? Because I know that's been sometimes an issue in the past.
We're hiring staff. I mean, we're gonna have people in-house that'll be able to do that. We've already started to do an audit with the tie downs, and we're realizing who's out there paying and who isn't. It's been a matter of capacity. You know, we just have not, as a staff, had the capacity to go follow up on these things. So we're just now starting to build that program.
Is there a possibility to automate it and to have some kind of
And that's
system where we?
one
can
of the
build
things
them?
to look at, definitely.
Okay. And
Okay.
then the last one is, I know we've talked about this before, planes that are just kind of hanging out there that we haven't had an agreement with before, that we maybe aren't allowed to touch, but we don't necessarily want them to just be there and not be functional. How are we dealing with those? Planes?
Conceivably, on the 22nd, you will be seeing a tie down policy that'll address derelict aircraft.
Okay.
And so that policy will be the means by which we're going to enforce that.
So we don't
All-
necessarily need them to sign a new contract that says that we can do something with their plane if their plane's already sitting out there and just.
Well,
take
the
space.
lease agreements talk about that generally.
Okay,
But this
so we
will be
do have
more
some kind of
specific into how we actually deal with those things.
Okay.
And what the requirements are.
Perfect. Thank you.
It'll actually supplement the tie down agreements we currently have.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just quickly add one extra comment to the question from Councilmember Riddell Harris. The resolution does authorize staff to increase the fees by the CPI every year, effective on January 1. So if the council wanted to increase above or below that CPI or decrease below the CPI, that would need to come back to council, but otherwise staff would be able to do that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
At least this staff for public and transparency would probably put that on as an informational item for
Yeah,
the
I would
council.
recommend
So, yeah.
that. Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jonathan, thanks for the very thorough presentation. A quick question. How did you did an overview of your outreach? How did that go with 5AC, other customers and clients that we have out at the airport?
It was shocking because I had been through rate increases before and proposals like that, and they're never well received. This one was actually well received. People understood the need for increased costs to maintain the airport. The other thing was a lot of them are hoping that those will encourage those people that aren't maintaining their aircraft to do something with them or to find another place for them, because we have very limited space at the Auburn airport.
Right. Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
it
it.
was, like I said, it was
Thank you. That was
Found it.
going to be my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Civil-
undoubtedly something will happen and then somebody will come in, but we've made every effort and so far it's actually been well received,
Thank
especially
you.
the effort for transparency.
I'll open it up for a public hearing. Do I have anyone from the public that would like to comment on this issue? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have any comments from city council or a motion?
I have a couple comments, Madam
Okay.
Mayor. I didn't have any questions, but I wanted to really say thank you to Jonathan. You've done your homework with this. I know that he and I have spoken over the past couple of months on this. I've also done my due diligence and spoken with the AAA and so forth to make sure that everyone's, copacetic. And I really appreciate that we are moving forward with a plan so that we can be fair and equitable in our fee structure, that we're transparent, which is so incredibly important, and that we're helping to make our airport more self-sustainable. And the airport users recognize that there are some huge projects on the horizon right now, and that we need to be able to fund them. And increasing, and when we're 47% lower than everyone else on some of these fees, we just can't get there. So I really appreciate the airport users' recognition of the need to bump these up, and staff's work, especially Jonathan, to ensure that they understand and that they're comfortable with the increases. I'm not a big fan of increasing fees, but in this instance, it's needed and the funds will be well spent. And I agree that if we do need to bring this back, even with the CPI, I'd like to have it as an informational item, just so that we get that information in case we do get questions. Again, transparency is so incredibly important at that airport. And so I just want to make that statement. And again, I can't thank you enough. And John as well. We've got a great airport and there's great communication right now. And because of that, we're able to deal with things like this in a responsible and equitable and pleasant fashion. Because if we had tried this maybe a year ago or so, I'm guarantee you it wouldn't be the same result. So thank you very much.
And I want to say thank you also. And I'm very happy that it was well received. You did your due diligence. We did our due diligence, the staff. We will be putting this to good use. The airport does need to have maintenance and improvements that we have to do. So this is an important part of the process. So thank you very much. And with that, I think we're all kind of in agreement. So do we have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion. By resolution, adopt the new Auburn Airport fee schedule.
I'll second, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Spokely.
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Amara.
Yes, thank you very much. That passes. Thank you.
very much.
We will go on to council business. Placer County Transportation and Planning, PCTPA presentation by Mike Lukin, Executive Director of Placer County Transportation and Planning Agency regarding the Placer Regional Transportation Challenges.
Good to see you, Mike.
Good to see you.
I believe the remote will now be working for the slideshow.
Okay. Yes.
Sorry, Jonathan.
Before I get going, I just wanted to say kudos to Jonathan and our staff works very closely with him. David Malco, who operates our airport land use program, works very closely with Jonathan and a wonderful staff member to work with. And we very much look forward to great success at the Auburn Airport. So tonight we're here to see you for a reason, which is we have the results of our South County sales tax measure effort, but I'm also kind of here tonight kind of as an annual outreach to the Auburn City Council. We're going out to each council and the Board of Supervisors to kind of talk about some of the transportation challenges that we have and some of the projects that we have that involve the city of Auburn. So I know most of you, and especially our current board member, Councilperson Dowden Calvillo, and former board member, Councilperson Amara, and actually even Mr. Spokely was also on our board. So I know you guys know who we are, but maybe for the audience, we are not the city, we are not the county. We are a special district that was set up about 30 years ago to essentially implement transportation planning, funding of transportation planning, and really to do that here in Placer County. One of our sister agencies in El Dorado County, the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, also does that as well. And both of our counties thought it very important, again, like 30 years ago, that we do that here in Placer County, and we have control of our own destiny as opposed to letting someone in West Sacramento or Davis, not that they're not good people, tell us, how we should plan and fund our roads and what our priorities are. So it's worked very well. Our agency has done, I think, a good job at getting a lot of projects funded throughout the county and including here in Auburn. And also we have a great reputation where we monitor our projects constantly. And I would say, Benjel's not here, but we sort of nag our jurisdictions a little bit on those projects as well. But we have the reputation of having every single one of our projects come in on time, on budget or under budget or ahead of schedule throughout our entire history. And not too many agencies like ours throughout the state can do that. And we hope that reputation continues. We do have a lot of challenges, and with every day, as I'm sure the city of Auburn can attest to with all the business that they conduct, we have challenges that keep getting larger and larger and larger. And we are a fast growing community, and we have a lot of stuff to do, especially in the South Placer area. But throughout Placer, we have to have all forms of transportation. Roads, we're a suburban community, so roads are generally at the top of the list, but we also have transit needs. We spoke about your Auburn on-demand transit earlier, and bicycle and pedestrian and other forms of transportation. We need it all here in Placer County. But in terms of roads, and whether they be for additional growth or whether they be for emergency access, the state has adopted this new policy, of which we copied the cover on this slide here, called the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, or CAPTI. Nice long name, which basically says you will not create any projects that are VMT increasing, period. And not tomorrow and not 5 years from now, no phase in now. And so that makes us expanding our roadways very, very difficult. The onus is upon us to either combine those projects with non-VMT increasing projects, or in the case of even emergency access, we are guilty until proven innocent that our project is not VMT increasing. And so if we have a roadway we need for emergency access, we're going to have to prove that we need that roadway, that it's not going to be used for traffic or anything else. And that's a very, very, very difficult process to go through. And the state has implemented this through the governor's office. It's an executive order. And the federal government seems to be kind of following lockstep. So we're going to get it from both sides, both state and federal. In a lot of cases, we're going to have to redesign our projects, like Highway 65. I know that's not here in Auburn, but we're going to have to, in order to expand that, we're going to have to possibly do things like managed lanes or toll lanes in the first phase of the project, not in the latter phase of the project, even though those HOV lanes don't go anywhere. We're going to have to do that first. We're going to have to probably put in a very large light to medium duty truck charging facility at the Highway 65 interchange. Those projects cost sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars of extra dollars. And so to meet these CAPDI requirements, I'm not saying it's wrong or it's right, it's not what we should do, but there is a high cost for that. And again, it's not a phase in, it's an immediate change. So just a big challenge I wanted to make you aware of as your community. You're going to face it just like the rest of the county and the rest of the state. So what is the problem? The biggest problem we have in Placer County, and this again, excuse my presentation, deals a lot with the south part of the county, but whether you're in the south part of the county, whether you're in Auburn, we have a strategic deficit in transportation funding. With the South County, I'll use as an illustration, we have $3 billion in need. We get about $2 billion of that from the building community through impact fees, and we need about $1 billion that we have to fund somehow on our own. In the old days, which it was up until about 15 years ago, and dated back to the Eisenhower administration, there was a funding formula that either because mainly they own these roadways, we fund 80 or 90% of the project, or we fund 10 to 20% of the project, and they would fund 80 to 90% of the project. About 15 years ago, the funding formula changed mainly due to competition. And although the rules still say you have to come up with 10 to 20% in order to be competitive, so you can apply all you want, but in order to actually get the money, you have to come up with half. So if a project costs $10 million, you're going to have to come up with 5, and the state or federal government will come up with 5. And that creates these gaps in funding. And I think it was mentioned on one of your consent items. Well, a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, we just passed this thing called SB1 or the gas tax, and we thought this was going to fund everything. Well, short answer, if your city team hasn't told you already, is no. It funds half of what we need. It funds what we have mostly. It's the whole fix it first program that the state was able, after 17 years, to come up with a funding source to fix what we have. They kind of gave up on the fact that we're a growing community, a growing state, and they went with just what we have. It's very much needed. We have a huge backlog, as you know, with rehabilitating our roads, replacing our public transit buses, fixing our highways for pedestrian safety, and our roads and bridges. There's a tiny amount of money in the state of California for local congestion management, but it's mostly around our seaports, which are the most congested parts of the state, not really the rest of the state. So big projects that we want to do here in Auburn, or these big 4 that we've listed in the south part of the county, we're kind of on our own. SB1 will not fund those types of projects. But again, we're generating in Placer County about $20 million a year in SB1, a little bit more with the price of gas going up of late. But that's very important because we have about $1 billion of backlog of rehabilitation needs in Placer County. So, as I mentioned tonight, we're kind of here at the tail end of a big effort in the south part of the county. We had attempted in 2016. And again, we looked at the feasibility in 2020 of doing a countywide transportation sales tax measure. because of the difficulty and cost of that 2/3 requirement for those measures, we can only include communities that actually show support. And the way we find support is we use polling. It's really the only method that we have to do it. And unfortunately, in 2016, when we put Measure M on the ballot, from about Penryn up, the vote was significantly lower than the rest of the county in the 40 and 50%, as opposed to the 2/3 at 66.67%. We tried again with our board's direction to look at that again in 2020. Essentially here in Auburn, we had the same results. You were in the 40 to 50% support, but not enough to meet that threshold. So we reverted back to our original plan, which was to look at the south part of the county. That's where most of the need is and where most of the sales tax is generated. And so we've been concentrating on that for a number of years. And so this year, the message to you is that for the south part of the county, we almost got there. We weren't. The main reason was there's too many other things going on in the world right now, and we used to be a top 3 issue, and now we dropped down to number 8 or number 9, and so we actually. Oh, there we go. We actually got to the 2/3, but kind of a soft 2/3. We just not quite enough to put it on the ballot, and so our board said let's wait until 2024. To take a look at this, wait for a presidential election where we have a higher voter turnout. But again, it's the first time since the pandemic that we've recovered to that 2/3 interest. And we think that with people returning to employment, either in a hybrid situation or full employment, that we will get to that number to cross that threshold to support a measure. Right now, countywide, in South Placer, we're at about 120% of pre-pandemic traffic volume, and even up the hill, we're right back where we were prior to the pandemic with our volume on our roadways. And this is just kind of a historical of where we've been. And the reason that, why are we bringing this back to Auburn? It's, they're not affected. Well, the answer is actually you are affected because you spend a lot of time either in your residents employed in the south part of the county. You might shop in the south part of the county, and the south part of the county is sort of the economic engine for the county. So what's good for, a big chunk of the county is good for most of the county. And so when we do this planning for this sales tax measure, the state of California, although we disagree with them on a lot of things, they require us to actually go to the Auburn City Council and all the city councils and explain, well, what are we doing in the rest of the county? Because what is done in one part of the county affects the entire county. And so had we got to the point of where our board would put this on the ballot, we would actually be here tonight asking you to support the expenditure plan for the project. But because we delayed this till 2024, we're just kind of here tonight to kind of tell you where we're at. I did want to, say that we do work with your staff, with John and Menjel and Jonathan and others quite extensively on many projects. This is I think this was out of your general plan, just a number of the projects that you have going on here. I'm sure a lot of these are familiar. Maybe some of them are out of date, but a lot of things going on in Auburn. And again, our job is to help you find a way to fund those. And we're going to do our best to look at under every rock and every grant and every program to help you get your projects funded here in the county and working together with you as we have for the last 30 years. And again, some of those projects that are priorities for you. Another big project that we're working on is the Highway 49 Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan, big name. But this is a plan that was just adopted by Caltrans District 3 and also by PCTPA and I wouldn't say adopted, but accepted by our two agencies and the Nevada County Transportation Commission. What this plan does, it's very significant is that it opens us up to additional funding possibilities. The state of California with that thing called CAPDI that I'd explained further, said, well, if you're going to apply for our programs, you actually have to have a multimodal corridor plan in place. And so we looked, again, comprehensively from, essentially Highway 20 in Nevada County all the way down to Interstate 80. We took a look at a lot of the needs, especially in the area of public safety and accidents and fatalities and other things that occur along the roadway. And what this document will do is we'll be able to lean on this when we put in a grant application for a project here in Auburn or in the county or in Nevada County. We will have a much greater chance of getting it because we have this document in place. And it does document the problem and the collision data and all of the different particulars of why this corridor is in need of great improvement. And again, just some of the details and some of the projects in this, you can access this either on our website or at Caltrans District 3's website. The other project we have, we're working on extensively is the Highway 49 sidewalk gap closure. As you know, the state of California and Caltrans completed the rehab project or SHOP project for Highway 49 from Dry Creek down to Interstate 80. They were able to do a number of sidewalks and bike trails along that length. But we came in following their $55 million in funding and applied for and received one of the largest grants in the state of California for the ATP or Alternative Transportation Program to really fill in the rest of the gaps. So with the completion of this project on one side of the roadway or another, there will be a continuous path for persons to not have to go out in the street, but use the actual bike lane or the sidewalk to get in different places. And this, again, this is to relieve a lot of folks that are using the corridor as they shouldn't with, crossing at illegal points and that type of thing. This also includes a significant amount of funding for a Safe Routes to Schools program. So we and the County Department of Social Services are working with 4 to 5 schools along the corridor to implement Safe Routes to Schools plans in the old and also encourage kids to walk and bike to school safely. In the old days, which weren't that long ago, 25 years ago, you used to have 70% of school kids would bike or walk to work, and 20 to 25% would be taken in the car. That's now flipped, whereas you only have about 20% using their bikes or walking. And we're hoping to also change that by implementing safe things like improvements at each one of the schools, or improve, in sidewalks and that type of thing, as well as improvements along the corridor. And then the last big project, which some of you might have been at the workshop, is the whole confluence at the American River project. This is a project that was started by, again, our sister agency, El Dorado Transportation Commission. They got a large grant to kind of take a look at the confluence and the parking situation and the traffic congestion down there. And we've just started the process of cataloging the problem. And then this is the second, I think, workshop we've had with the public, which was held a couple weeks ago, or actually 11 days ago, to get people's input on the problem. And then the next step in this will be to essentially come up with solutions. And here's some of the folks that are participating in that. So, and the study area for that. Last project I wanted to mention is our Capital Corridor project. Not only is councilperson Dowden Cavillo on PCTPA, but she's also an alternate on the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority, which is the train service that goes all the way from San Jose up to the Auburn station. We're very excited about a couple projects. One is to expand more trips to Roseville, and we would love to have expanded more trips up to Auburn or even to Colfax. But as you know, UP owns the railroad tracks, and we were able to get permission to pursue an increase to 3 daily round trips and eventually 10 daily round trips to Roseville. we informally have asked UP, well, of those trips, could we maybe extend a little farther to Rockland or Auburn? And they didn't say no. So we'll be pushing that a little bit in the near term here. The first projects we're hoping by the end of this year to have the funding in place for the 3 daily round trips. And then, within a number of years to get the 10 daily round trips. Again, you'll have the bus service to supplement this, which again, does originate in Auburn or points east. But this is a start and to get us additional service to Roseville. And again, our hopes to expand up the hill. Actually, I did not include this. Well, I'm out of the slide show now. The one thing I did not include with this is we are also taking a look, again, very long-term project of expanding the Capital Corridor service all the way to Reno. And so we're at the very, very, very beginning stages of that with UP and all of the partners along the railroad, all the way to Sparks, Nevada. And also with Caltrans and the Nevada Department of Transportation to look at the feasibility of that. Again, that's probably a 20-year project, but you have to start somewhere, and we're starting that today. So that I'll wrap up. Probably spoke too long as it is. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it. If there are questions beyond tonight, my phone number and email address and my deputy director, Rick Carter, you can call us anytime. So.
Thank you, Mike, for your presentation. Do we have any questions from the city council?
I just had a quick question and I'll make comments afterwards, but thank you very much for the report. I really appreciate it. Being a member of PCTPA, I've seen this and I really appreciate the fact that you brought it to the city council so that the public has an opportunity to gain this knowledge as well. Just really quickly though, the time frame for the Highway 49 sidewalk gap closure project, what are you thinking there for completion?
Our hope is to go to construction in 2023.
Okay, construction in 2023. Thank you.
We have a lot of hoops to jump, but
Yeah.
Go ahead and give your comments as well.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Well, really, I really appreciate working with Mike and the team on PCTPA issues. And I think we do a great job here in the county. We did really think about the sales tax issue. We had a lot of discussion on it, a lot of polling that led up to that decision to wait until the next election cycle. So we are taking these things very seriously and looking at them very, very carefully on a very regular basis. And I did want to just also mention that I did attend the PCTPA and El Dorado County Transportation Planning Agency's workshop for the American River. It was 10 days ago. And we talked about various issues. And the big issue really what seemed to be was the fact that you have trucks that are going on 49 that are prohibited from doing so and trying to come up with a way to keep them off that route. But we also talked about the shuttle, the on-demand shuttle, and folks in Cool are very well aware of the shuttle and really support the shuttle. At first they were thinking it was free, but I corrected them on that. And they were actually grateful to hear that there was a charge to it. But they really wanted to advance our advertising of it. And I spoke with John, and something that I've spoken with our Endurance Capital Committee about as well is maybe doing some additional advertising through the Endurance Capital World Committee on the on-demand shuttle that goes down to the confluence as well. So we're going to try to expand some efforts that way too. Since they're already working on getting people here, but also to ensure they know about the shuttle they can take. So anyway, so thank you again for the presentation today.
Do we have any other comments or questions? Councilman Spokely?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mike, thank you very much for the presentation as well. I just wanted to make the comment that working with PCTPA over the years has been a real treat. It's great to have an organization that focuses on dollars in our county, not having to worry about other jurisdictions or other counties to contend for those same dollars. So very professional organization. You do a great job leading it. Thank you very much, Mike.
thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman-
I did want
Riddell.
to mention with Councilperson Dowden Cavillo's comment about the confluence. That is actually a pet peeve of mine in terms of we have to notify people before they get here, because once they get here, they're going down the hill to park or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're working with lots of different things. We've asked Caltrans to look at their signage, also the radio network that they have, utilizing that. So somehow we tell people before they get here that the shuttle's available.
And I think there's room for cooperation with Caltrans as well to get information about our shuttle. And that I did hear a lot of folks talk about that as well, as getting ahead of it before, so that when they're planning their trip. And that's why the Endurance Capital Committee was also looking into this, as we're promoting people to come up here. And oh, by the way, when you come up here and you want to go to the confluence, take our shuttle. So anything that we can do to help facilitate that with PCTP, I know that we would welcome that, but really getting the word out ahead of time is critical.
Very critical. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Thank you for your presentation. I just had a couple quick questions. So you talked about how the state is limiting VMT and that that's kind of a factor for being able to grow the amount of the size of the roads and things like that. Are they also limiting the growth? Because when you add houses, that creates VMT, does it not?
Yes, it's quite a conundrum. Yes.
So that's a concern that I have, is that North Auburn has a lot of planning, Bowman and some other commercial spaces that will increase the amount of vehicle miles traveled, but there's not a lot of plans to expand the roads in order to accommodate that. So how do you guys deal with those kinds of issues? Because that directly impacts us both. If it goes up to Bell Road or if it goes out 49, that's a huge traffic issue for us.
Well, the tack that we're taking, and we hope it works, it has for some of the early rounds of the SB1 competitive funding, is that we look at a corridor from a multimodal approach. So we're not, I think the days of us just applying for expanding the road are gone. So we have to take a look at, well, okay, if we're going to expand the road, we have to expand transit, we have to expand bike ped, we have to do all of those at once. And we're hoping that is sufficient for the state to fund us. So the jury's still out, but that's our approach as of now.
So sorry, I'm still a little new to all this. So that would be incorporated into the plans for the new development, and it wouldn't go through unless we get that plan for how to get those people around, or can we still build those and just get stuck with the transportation issues?
Yes. I mean, to us, it's when it comes to applying for grants or other types of things, to say, for example, at some point in time, there'll be justification for Highway 49 to go to 6 lanes. And so when that time comes, we would have to take a look at, okay, what bus service, and maybe even by the time we need that way out in the future, rail service or some other type of service, what other bike peds, other alternative modes can we look at? And we're going to have to do all of them all at once in order to get things funded. You're right. There is kind of a detached piece of land use to that. And that's, I think, left up to local jurisdictions, so to the county and to the city of Auburn, to decide, well, at what threshold do we allow expansion without those transportation improvements?
So we kind of end up with a 65 issue where you build out and then you have the justification after there's all that traffic to then expand the road or make those changes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure I'm understanding.
Unfortunately, that's unfortunately that in California, you're typically behind in terms of the roadways and getting those funded. So.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. For the safe routes to school, I would hope that you're working with EV Kane. Our school district just eliminated buses. So we'll have a lot more. That was a couple of weeks ago. And the most amount of people that rode those buses were the middle school students. And so they're going to need a lot of help with getting to school, because 49 is not the safest of routes for a lot of them to be traveling on. So I hope that that's something that you'll be working with them on as well.
I would note that again, we're the county Department of Social Services is kind of our agency that we're using, but the reports back from them is that all of the schools are very enthusiastic about this program.
I'm sure they are with missing their buses.
Well, that especially now. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then the last piece was you were talking about medium and heavy duty EV charging as part of a project that you were working on. Is there a greater effort to do EV planning and talk about EV charging deserts on different corridors around in the county?
Yes. SACOG is just about to embark upon a region-wide study of that. And so if the city of Auburn has plans for enhanced charging, we need to get you on that map, because that, again, kind of like the plan for the multimodal corridor, that will be something that would be advantageous to be on to attract state and federal dollars for those programs.
I know that I've been talking with John and Menjel about some EV charging stuff, so that would be good for us to get involved in that. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank
And
you.
I just had a couple, I am just hopefully relying on you to get the word out about the on-demand bus going down to the confluence. That was my question. It's important because we have such a good opportunity here for people to use that to go down to the confluence, and it'll help our city too. So thank you for making that one of your concerns and spreading the word. That's very important to us. And then as far as our schools, you know, we have several schools in town, Eva Kane, and what I hear from people is that you know, you will fill in the gaps, but they're not using the bike lanes on 49. It's just too dangerous. So if there is some way you can utilize some sort of money or something to put a barrier, make it safer, because there are a lot of kids that are going to school, and they, you know, we would love them to have the opportunity to bike to school, but it is not safe. And we cannot advocate them riding on 49. It's just not safe.
Can funding, sorry,
That's
can funding go for an alternative route? Does it have to go actually along the road, or could it go somewhere safer? Because I mean,
or put some sort of
49 will-
barrier.
So with ATP funding, and I think
Sorry to
you
interrupt.
you guys experience this with Nevada Street, is once it's funded, it's locked in. It can't be diverted for some other purpose. But I would tell you that we will, you know, I think another item that was identified by Councilperson Berlant, who's not here tonight, is to take a look at, you know, potential future landscaping along Highway 49. So we will do whatever, you know, we will work with the city very closely to do any of these types of projects, whether it's maybe a next grant for a barrier separation for the bike routes. I think that's an excellent idea. It's done in many other communities. Unfortunately, we can't use these dollars for that. And plus they're very tight. Even if we could, I don't think we have the budget in there to do that. But that's not saying the next ATP grant or ATP cycle, we couldn't look at something like that. So
Good, because that is a priority. And then the Capital Corridor, that's exciting. Hopefully, again, I appreciate you advocating to come to Auburn. That would be wonderful.
we're doing our best.
I know you
UP's
are.
hard to work with, but
And I
yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the fact that right now it is important that we have a multimodal approach, and that we are trying to advocate people get out of their cars and use other opportunities. I think it helps everyone. So thank you for complying with that as well. And with that, is there anyone in the public that has any comments? Okay, well, thank you so much.
Before I leave, I would also actually like to thank the Auburn Police Department. We work very closely with them because we're the building right next to the train station, and it presents a lot of challenges to the police department and to our, or we're a landlord in the community. And I just want to say thank you very much to your police department and to you for making that, you know, that's an entryway to the community, and to making, you know, when there's a problem out there, we can count on the Auburn Police Department every time. So
Good, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now that brings us to our police department. The 3-year homeless strategic plan update presentation by Chief Canan.
Well, again, good evening, Mayor, City Council members, Ryan Canan, the Chief of Police. And yes, we will be giving the 3-year Auburn Homeless Strategic Plan update here. So almost 4 years ago, the city put together the Homeless Transient Ad Hoc Task Force to really start looking at ways to address and really come up with new ways to kind of, I don't want to say deal with the homeless problem, but to start really navigating through the homeless problem and working with outside agencies, working with our resources to come up with a way that we can not only serve the homeless population, but really it comes down to also managing the homeless population and meet the needs of our communities. And one of the first things that the community told me was, you know, you have to get rid of the homeless. And, you know, the reality is it's called kidnapping. And we just can't pick these people up and throw them in our cars and drive them to somewhere else. Yeah, I think the biggest part was, let's figure out what is the issues? What are those things that our community is concerned with? And then start developing a plan of action to start doing that. And so at the end of 2018, this ad hoc task force came up with really 5 global areas. One was the crime prevention through an environmental design program, also called CEPTED. 2 was to address ordinances that were going on, specifically panhandling, camping as it was coming out, public education. Again, one of the things I heard from the community was, other agencies are doing it better early on. And I asked why they thought that. And the response was, well, because we see it. We see what those other agencies are doing. And really it came down to our social media. It's like, because you see these other agencies on social media and you don't see it from us, that you think they're doing a better job. Short answer was yes. So we said, okay, well, we can address that. Enforcement. And then number 5 was engagement with other organizations. So after that, the plan of action and the recommendations from the ad hoc task force, we started looking at, we came up with 2 goals and objectives that we had. One was to reduce chronic homelessness by 10%. And you can see there, what we did was over three years, and we picked the Marbut study definition, which is a chronic homeless is a person who has been homeless more than 1 straight year, have had 4 homeless episodes in 3 years, or a homeless person with a disabling condition. Continue to talk about it. When people talk about, fixing or addressing homelessness, it really comes down to the definition, because there are people who are couch surfing. There's people who are living in their cars. There's a wide range, and just about every entity that is doing something to address homelessness has their own definition. And then you can see we added our own, right? A person contacted 4 months during a rolling 12-month period. The reason we added that one was we didn't know if we were going to have access to the information through Health and Human Services or other groups that are working with the homeless. And you also, if you haven't, the grand jury just put out a report. One of those topics was Health and Human Services and homelessness. I think one thing you'll notice that they changed their definition as well in that study, in that report. What they actually did now was they got rid of they included that 3rd category, the homeless person with a disabling condition, and included it with the other 2 definitions. So in order to be a chronic, based on the grand jury's definition in there, you have to have a disabling condition and be homeless for over a year, or have a disabling condition and have 4 homeless episodes in 3 years. I thought that was, for me, notable, because now you're saying that the only way that they can be a chronic homeless person is if they have a disabling condition. And, we have individuals that have been homeless for some time that probably don't meet that criteria. They've just been homeless for over a year.
If someone just can't afford to live in a home, which I know some people like that are just sleeping at somebody else's house or a sibling's house, they're not considered homeless because they don't have a disabling condition.
They're not going to be considered chronic homeless.
Chronic homeless. So we're not going to do anything about them just because they can't support themselves on, with our economy today. We're not going to deal with them. Okay.
They wouldn't be looked at, certainly from our perspective, because one of those things too is we didn't want to get caught up on having to identify those individuals who are transients in nature, right? And we have a train station, we have a bus station. We're right in the middle between San Francisco and the Bay Area and Reno, the Tahoe area. And there's a number of people who choose to be homeless that want to make that trek. And I didn't want to really have to address that because I believe that's a larger issue than for us. And then number 2 was the nuisance type of calls for service. Again, it was to reduce the number of calls for service by 10%. And you can see there, those are the 5 categories that we chose: camping, loitering, panhandling, trespassing, and suspicious activity. Those are typically more associated with transients and homeless individuals. And so we started looking at those 5 areas. Our methodology here, so we created the strategic plan. Part of that was increased consistent CAT operations. So our community action team, early on, we had about $25,000 to our budget increased for overtime operations. The CAT team went out there about pretty much on average of 2 times per week for several hours at a time. Increase the department's public awareness via our social media. And then data collected via 2 record management systems and a standard paper documentation. So during this 3-year plan is when we implemented the new CAD and RMS system with Sunridge, which now allows us to track and really capture a lot better information. And you can see there homeless transit related calls involving nuisance calls, officer initiated activity involving homeless contacted, camps located and cleared. So that was all the information that we're documenting. The team made up of Auburn police officers, code enforcement, or community service officers. One of the recommendations early on was getting a community service officer to help lead this effort, which we did. It actually took us about 3 recruiting processes and hiring process to finally get them. It was Connor Johnson, who introduced the last city council meeting as one of our newest officers. So that position is currently vacant at the moment, but we have plans on filling that. And our partnership with Placer County Probation and Placer County Health and Human Services has hands down been a great addition to our efforts here. The timeline, as I mentioned, in August 2018, the Homeless Transient Ad Hoc Committee presented recommendations to the City Council. July of 2019, we presented on our first quarterly presentation to the City Council on our plan. At the end of 19, we established our baseline of chronic homelessness, which was 41, and our nuisance type calls, 947. As you can see there at the end of 2020, we completed the second year, and our homeless count at that point was 32, and our nuisance calls had been reduced to 796. And then we wrapped up this 3-year strategic plan with the reduction of chronic homeless by 49% and our nuisance calls by 24. And here's some snapshots right here. So you can look at the graph on the left, the chronic homeless. So you can see the decrease that we experienced over the 3 years. So we start off with 41, reduced to 32, and then at the end of 2021, we found that we were down to 21 chronic homeless. And then the next chart there kind of shows how long those individuals have been homeless. So you can see 2 have been 20 years or plus. So we have an individual, like I mentioned earlier, who's been homeless 28 years in the city of Auburn.
Wow.
He's been offered services a number of times, he does not want the services, does not want to be a part of that, but chooses to be homeless. And we actually get very, very few calls on him as an individual. 3 people in 2019 we found had been homeless at the 10 to 20 year mark, 11, 5 to 10. And you can see the largest number was 0 to 5 years, most of our homeless at that point. What we found during this strategic plan really was that's the group that we need to get to. That's the group that we need to really make frequent contacts, get health and human services to them, and offer them those resources, because the idea of being homeless was relatively new to them. And you find a number of people who lose their job, can't afford the rent, can't afford their home, end up on the street, but just don't know where to go to get those resources. Could be something as simple as getting someone a driver's license, or a bus ticket because they're trying to get home to somewhere else that's not Auburn. And you can see at 2022, at the end of this, our largest decrease was in that group of 0 to 5 years. And the other 3 were relatively the same, because the reality is most of the same people in both charts. Nuisance calls, you can see there 947 was the first year, 796, and then we saw another decrease to 715. I know part of the discussion might be, well, are people calling us? Are they not calling us anymore as a result of this? And that's why we saw a decrease. I couldn't tell you. We are a full service police department. We do take all those calls. We do respond to each one of these calls. So I would hope and encourage the community to continue to call us, because the reality is if we're not getting the phone call, then we probably don't know. And therefore we're not dealing with whatever issues are happening. The chart just to the right of that, we started looking at which calls involved an actual homeless or transient individual. And you can see that first year, most of those calls, the 947, only 188 of them involved a homeless individual. So most of those weren't actually transient related at all. And then you saw the next year where that drastically increased to 222 and then 225. So even though the calls for service have decreased, more transient individuals were involved in those calls. And then the next trend line you can see is actually each year in comparison to when we saw those calls for service. Can't really tell the color on that one now. But you can see when we're seeing most of those calls for service and when we're seeing a drop. So looks like March, we see some increases, saw the largest increase, it looks like 2019. And then slowly that trend line continued to go down. Associated costs, our CAT operations, the first year about $25,000 in overtime for 92 operations, followed with 83 operations at 27,000, and then this final year about 24,000 with 69 operations. Camp cleanups decreased as well. I think some of that conversation is when we implemented this, a lot of our camp, as a city, we spent a large amount of money getting a lot of those camps that have been established cleaned up. So by maintaining our process and our strategic plan, we were able to really stay in front of those high costs. Total for the 3 years, our overtime cost is about $78,000. Conducted 244 CAT operations in total, and then the 3 years, our camp cleanup cost about $13,000 over 3 years.
For the homeless individuals in town that have been around for a while, do they tend to kind of migrate around, or do they tend to be more of the setup encampment? I just don't know how that, I mean, assume you can find them normally in similar spots and they have, are they an encampment issue, or do they tend to be not so much?
So we haven't seen a lot of those camps.
Okay.
I mean, we hope again that we get those phone calls when someone sees a camp popping up.
Okay.
No doubt the reality is a lot of this stuff is out of sight, out of mind.
Okay. So they might have a place, we just don't see it.
Yes.
Got it.
So, kind of that location question. So with our new CAD and RMS system, one of the cool features we can do is these heat maps. And so you can see that first map, which was 2019, no doubt kind of all sorts, 947 calls for service, probably in that all over the city. So it looks like one giant blob. Then you can kind of see a decrease and then a little bit more at the screen on the right. But you can see where those hotspots are. And we start talking about top locations. So Grass Valley Highway was responsible for 151 calls, 18% between July of 2020 and July of 2021, or December of 2021, rather. 151 calls, 18% of those calls that were transient related were all along Grass Valley Highway. The 400 block was responsible for 13% of those calls. Elm.
Do we see an increase in our Highway 49 activity when Placer County does things that upsets their homeless camps? Do
We actually
see it
haven't
slow down?
seen, that's one of those things is that we really haven't seen a lot of those issues. We anticipated issues.
You would think because it's close and, occasionally they'll clean out camps and
Yeah.
things like that too. I just didn't know if it flows down to us.
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of that. I mean, we'll see some, no doubt. People make their way through. They've been seen in downtown, Old Town, and everything else. They can go there. But it's making that frequent contact with folks, identifying, hey, you need resources, and we're not the place for resources.
When the county implemented the room key program,
Mhm.
Home key would,
I think
There's
it
a
was
couple of
room key
them.
So
initially.
they had a couple, yeah. So it was Project Room Key and then Project Home Key. So Room Key was the hotels.
Right.
So we saw some folks go into the Elm,
what I
the
was
Elmwood
gonna ask.
Hotel.
You saw an increase, a pretty sharp increase in calls.
We did see some calls
To
going
the
into there. I know the county was going to purchase the Elmwood Hotel, but based on some of those issues that we were seeing, and we saw some folks go into like I said, the Elmwood, and I know a number of folks went in and actually realized it wasn't for them and moved out almost immediately. So, the thing about the resources is they work for some people, but they don't work for all people. So some of the notables, successes, the implementation of our new CAD RMS system was huge. The partnership with Health and Human Services early, and you can see their challenges, COVID and Health and Human Services. So when COVID started, Health and Human Services really changed their gears to serving the community as it related to COVID and less along the lines of homelessness, certainly in the different regions. So our partnership wasn't as strong as it was towards the end as it was in the beginning. So required our CSO and our officers to learn about a lot of the resources and try to continue to offer them. Frequent interactions with individuals was a success. This is what makes it a success is that, when the stars align for individuals, then they might be more willing to take this advantage of the services. And we had an engaged community, people watching us on social media, reporting it, letting us know. We have on a report of concern on the website, so people can report camps they see or graffiti. And so that was very much a success for us. Legislation, panhandling, the states and the federal government said ultimately panhandling was legal, people can do it. And all of our ordinances became, meaningless. The goal with some of those ordinances really was a time, place, and manner component to it. So people couldn't panhandle and ask for money when people are stuck or at an ATM where they feel uncomfortable, or at the gas pump where they can't just pick up and leave. Obviously, the government, the courts didn't see it that way, and therefore, we lost the tool. Camping in the Martin versus Boise decision, that came out as well during this strategic plan session. As we've seen in a lot of regional meetings, a lot of other things, everybody has their take on what does this decision mean. For us, certainly, our beds are limited in the region, but Martin versus Boise focus only on camping. And the issue was the law was not being applied fairly or equally. And it's kind of like, you can't be in a park after hours because the law applies to everybody. So there's a lot of the nuances with that. And then county's ordinances, the camping at the DeWitt Center, no overnight parking. We are prepared and ready to address those things if we saw a significant impact, and we haven't. I'll be honest, we're sitting on an ordinance right now for kind of very similar to the overnight parking in the city's parking lots. So we just never introduced it because we didn't see an issue starting in our parking lots yet. One area we did see when this happened was in the Regal parking lot. That's private property, and we worked with the property owners to remove those campers. And since I'm not aware of any other problem. Challenges closing the loop. We talk about this a lot. Like we mentioned in a previous city council meeting, about our biggest complaint as a department is not calling people back. This would be a continuation of that. If we call people back, let them know, give them an update of what's going on, we'd have a lot more happy people, but we're working on it. Because the report of concern, a lot of those calls that did come in, those go directly to our communication center. The call gets entered, we follow up, but nobody closed the loop on the report of concern backside. So something that we're working on. Moving forward, the department's impact program. So, homelessness isn't the only thing the department's faced with and dealing with, but our impact program really encompasses all of those different things. And our CAT team is being rolled into that program itself. So we won't have the community action team the way it used to be, but like I said, it'll be under the impact program, doing a lot of the similar goals and objectives. Tracking calls for service and offenders and locations, kind of like you just saw the heat map. We're getting away with how we were tracking this stuff before because it's not as conducive, and our RMS system allows us to do it in a much better fashion. Continue our community outreach concerns, department's homeless outreach efforts, and then public education on the community's involvement. So still things like report of concern, let us know what's going on. External, we need to identify resource to obtain. We need to identify the resources so we can assist in addressing our specific homeless transient needs. Currently, there's the regional homeless task force that's going on throughout the county. And, one of the last things we talked about in the previous meeting was we're all different. Our needs as a city is different than Roseville's or Rockland's or the county area in general. How we address that needs to be more specific to our needs and the needs of the homeless folks that live here. One city will allow camping. I stood in that meeting and said, there's no way this community would allow camping. We have other issues that we have to contend with, such as fire danger and other things. So that won't work for us. We don't have the resources here. The county at the DeWitt Center and then some down the hill, that's where the resources are. So these folks, our number of folks I do know went to the DeWitt Center because that's where resources are. Access to the Homeless Management Information System, which is the HMIS, also referred to as. This is how Health and Human Services really tracks the individuals. We don't have access to that. A lot of the other groups, nonprofits did get access to that, but when we don't have contact with somebody for a while, they drop off our radar, but we don't know where they go after that. And so it'd be nice to be part of the regional homeless management information system so we know where some of these folks end up. And I think as a region, it would help us because each one of the different jurisdictions could then have a snapshot of, hey, of the 21 homeless that left our city, where did they go? How many went to the DeWitt Center? How many ended up in a different jurisdiction? Most of our folks are from Auburn, but we don't know which part of Auburn. Is it North Auburn? Is it the city of Auburn? And yeah, we have others that have come from other jurisdictions in the city and outside the city. We talk about, again, report of concern has all the different ways. Camping is a big one, obviously, and graffiti. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I think we were asking some questions, but Councilman Spokely, do you have some
Yeah, just a couple of quick additional questions.
or comments?
Chief, thank you so much for the thorough report as always. The CAT RMS system is amazing. We had hopes, I had hopes when we approved that expenditure to do that upgrade, that it would allow you to generate reports, even the heat maps and different things I didn't know about, but it's perfect. We love it. I love it. The 21 that we currently have, at some point, we're going to plateau and level out, I would imagine, because we're going to have the same people, those guys that are in the 15 years living homeless on the streets of Auburn, those people aren't going to go anywhere. So moving forward, do you see a continual decline? Do you see it plateauing? What are your suspicions as we kind of move forward?
My suspicion is pretty much like what you just said. I see us plateauing because you will have those folks who have been homeless for a number of years. It's become their lifestyle. They're comfortable with it. For a lot of other reasons, they don't want to get off the streets. You know, one of the things I think we're missing, and not just us in this region, is getting those people who have dependency issues help. Most of our homeless have some type of dependency issue, whether it's alcohol or drugs, and then as a result, probably some mental health issues. Until we get those folks the help that they need, we're not going to see some of those numbers decrease. So I see, to answer your question, I see us plateauing. And again, our continued focus on those newly homeless, 0 to 5 years would be that goal.
Great. Based on the numbers you presented in your presentation, the number of CAT operations over the 3-year period, it looks like you're going out about once a week. Does that seem correct?
For the final year?
Yeah.
Yeah, that we saw a decrease in the number of CAT operations specific to homelessness. So, when I mentioned we rolled the CAT into the impact program, some of those CAT operations turned into DUI efforts. Certainly at the end of the year, some of those CAT operations turned into being at our schools on overtime when we were dealing with schools. So we did see a decrease in our operations as it relates to the true, what you see as CAT.
So with the transition into the impact program, are we going to be able to bolster those back up to continue the same frequency of the
CAT operations?
Yeah.
No, not the way they've been, because CAT was only focused on homelessness. And, one of the things that we saw at the end, certainly year to year, is we had other needs and other areas to focus on. A couple months ago, it was the school park reserve. And a couple months before that, it was DUI efforts. School started in August of 2021. Everybody's coming back from COVID. We changed gears and we had to spend most of our time at and around the schools to deal with traffic. And this is where I talk about the resources, having more than just the overtime operations to manage this. Now, an advantage that we have is one of our new part-time CSOs that we just brought on, Kathy Williamson, has a lot of experience in this world and will help to really continue the tracking and management of that. But if we see our homeless issues start being a problem, like we've done with traffic on Highway 49,
right,
like we've done with School Park Preserve, if we see those things starting to become that problem, then our efforts will be focused on, in this case, would be homelessness. It'll be out there, out and about.
It would be a shame to see it slip. So hopefully there's a way to continue the pressure, because it's not just City of Auburn police officers, it's the county Health and Human Services, clinician, it's the parole people, probation. So we don't have any ongoing relationship there that will continue on.
We do. We still have we have a very good relationship with probation and parole, like you mentioned, but also Health and Human Services. Certainly, I see as this regional program discussion continues to happen, I'm hoping that some of that dialogue is about having the cities with resources to track and to stay on top of this issue. I don't want to see it slip either, and so this continues to be one of our priorities. But it's just that this is one of those areas that we have to contend with and stay on top of. I would recommend that the community, when and if they see these issues, they need to call. They need to call, they need to report it. I know I sound like a broken record when I say that, but we have to be a data-driven organization and we have to use the data because, like I said, 1 month, it's a school park preserve. The next month, it's crashes on Highway 49. 1 month, the kids are going back in school. 1 month, it's, DUIs. Our world is constantly changing. And 1 month for us will be, more than likely, hey, this is how we're going to address homelessness this month. And, it's like whack-a-mole. Until we can engineer our way out of some of these problems, it's going to require us to kind of deal with a problem for a short period of time and then move on to the next one.
And it's not just calling in, sorry to interrupt, but also they can report it on the website. I keep trying to tell people that too. I know that oftentimes people will report it in social media, just throwing it out there kind of thing. And sometimes they'll tag council members and that makes it difficult because we don't always see that or see it in a timely manner. So call in to APD or to go onto the website and log it in. And that's how you can ensure that you get a response or at least action.
Right,
So-
right.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions?
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you again, Chief. Appreciate it.
Comments then? You're good.
I'll make a quick comment. Great report. We talked about 3 years when we set up the ad hoc committee back in 2018. I really hope that this is an ongoing report that you can bring back to the council on an annual basis so that we can see the progress year over year.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, good.
Okay, I'll go.
Riddell.
Thank you for your report. That's very helpful and good information. In regards to Placer County, I know that a lot of people talk about all the resources that we're supposed to get from them because we are putting money into Health and Human Services and they are supposed to be providing that. Are you finding that we're getting the appropriate level of services from Placer County, or are you finding that there's a gap that probably needs to be filled of things that we need? I know that we don't have enough beds for homeless with substance abuse, like you said, and I know that they also don't provide it for people, ones who have animals, so they won't leave their dog behind, those kinds of things. But also just with getting the resources from them to go out with us and do the work that needs to be done, are we finding that there's a gap, or are we finding that we get all the resources we need from Placer County?
So early on, we had a very good set of resources. We actually had a clinician came out with us. Most of those CAT operations, the clinician through Health and Human Services came out with that team. Some things transpired certainly during COVID, and the clinician wasn't available for us on a lot of those operations at that point. So this is where the CSO, the officers had to kind of pick up where we had that gap in services. So we definitely need, and again, we don't have a full-time homeless problem like some of the larger jurisdictions. We have a part-time homeless problem. And therefore we need some of those part-time services. We need a clinician that will work directly with us who can continue those frequent contacts, can develop that rapport. Again, I say it jokingly, but as good as we do, not all the homeless individuals trust us. And so you need that person who can be a case manager. You need that person who can start working with them and figuring out what resources an individual needs. Because if it's a veteran who needs services, that's easy. That's, you can get someone to the VA. But what about all those other services that are available that we don't know about? Health and Human Services clinician that's their role. And for us, that is actually absolutely a resource that we need here, and one that will continue to work closely with us.
And right now we're not getting that, and we're kind of
Right
just
now, we
filling
don't
in the
have
gap.
that. Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
And to follow up, why aren't we? I mean, is it,
I think a lot of it, Health and Human Services is still dealing with COVID.
they don't have the staff?
Yeah, right now, I don't believe they have the staff. And,
Right.
in Health and Human Services defense, they're handling a whole lot of other issues too. So, I mean,
Yeah.
from a management perspective, I couldn't tell you all how in-depth it is, but I know that they're tasked with a number of issues as well.
But if we do have an issue that you regard as pretty severe, would they come out and assist us?
I do feel like they would come out and help us out.
Okay, thank you.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, again, Chief, thanks so much for the presentation. I appreciate the information. It's very helpful. And I too would appreciate having that annual update. And thank you for being frank with us with regards to resources and the fact that, we're spread very thin, and that's the reality of it. And while homelessness is very important, it really is data driven. And I just hope that that our constituents understand that, the funding rate at this point, that's what it lends itself to. And so we really appreciate the efforts. And again, if people see things, they need to report it so that we can react to it. I didn't really have any specific questions, except, I just wanted to tell you, thank you very much for your efforts. And if there's anything that we can do, I know that the mayor and I do the 3x3 meetings with the county on a regular basis. And so we can also look into the clinician's assistance now that COVID is winding down. If there's assistance that's needed there, we can look into that as well. But really do appreciate all your work on this effort. So
Thank you.
And you might have mentioned this, but do you have data as to how many of the 40, we had 42, went to 21, went into housing?
I don't have that number. Anecdotally, I know a couple went into housing and left housing.
Okay.
Like I said, we got some into the Elmwood Motel. That individual, as soon as they got in there, they got out. We've seen an individual go into housing 3 different times and come right back out. I know, like I said, some went to the DeWitt Center.
Of the 21, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you,
No.
but of the 21, then you're saying not many were housed. So you think that they went to other regions or jurisdictions?
A number of them, left the area, left us. I know a number went to the DeWitt Center because they allowed camping. They allowed in their facilities, and that's close to the resources. So I would surmise that's why they went to the North Auburn area.
Yes. And I would like to say that I do appreciate your approach and what we have done here. And I do appreciate that you appreciate that this is a regional issue. And so whatever other regions do impacts us, and what we do impacts them. And so I would really support you reaching out and working with other regions. And as I'm sure you have tried to do. And again, that's why I think this council supports the model of the Campus of Hope when they came and spoke. So thank you for your energy and your philosophy. I appreciate it. So,
Madam Mayor, just to that end, I appreciate that you raised that issue of the Campus of Hope and the fact that, it is important that throughout the county that we are sharing in this effort of coming up with constructive and effective ways to help the homeless. And Auburn does, right now, it looks like we've got 21 in 2021. That certainly is not the bulk of the homelessness of the homeless. I think there were, I don't remember. Do you remember, Chief, what the number is for the county?
The point in time count that they last had was 750.
Okay, 750, and about 21 of them in the city of Auburn. And, we have the camping in North Auburn. And so I think that it is important for other jurisdictions to recognize that we all need to participate in the solution, like the Campus of Hope.
yes.
Just to clarify, so this is those definitions. So homelessness
True.
is not necessarily, that's not what we tracked. What we tracked was our chronics. So we said our chronics are the ones that meet that definition of being homeless for over a year, the 4 episodes over 3 years, and also someone with a disabling condition.
Okay, so I mean, that we could have someone that's on the streets for 2 weeks or.
We could have those folks are more the transitory in nature, could be just passing through, which is, I think, what a number of times we do get calls on is someone coming into town, walking through downtown or Old Town, and we get that call and we go contact them, but they haven't meet this criteria yet to be tracked that way.
The other nice thing
Thank
about the Campus of Hope facility is that it had very low rent housing for like those folks who can't afford a home but aren't necessarily going to live on the street. And so that was kind of a nice bridge that I liked as well, that I don't feel like we have enough of that type of a facility. And one more quick thing. I know you talk a lot about reporting it and how important that is. I feel like a lot of people feel uncomfortable reporting it because they don't want to bug you guys because you guys are busy. And so I don't know if there's a way we could do some kind of campaign or social media outreach to say, you know, like, it's
Website,
okay,
website.
please. It's okay to let us know that things are happening around town. We'd like to know so that way we can collect that data. And so I don't know if there's a way of expressing that, but I know that a lot of people I know are like, oh, well, I don't want to bug them because there's, you know, we know you have limited resources.
We will figure out how to do an infomercial.
Oh,
But again, at the same time, you know, it's not, again, I know a lot of people say that in, you know, in this public forum, it's not a bother.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality, if something's going on, then yes, we're going to put somebody on hold. If there's nothing going on and the dispatchers can take that call, then they're going to take the call. We'll log it. If they want to go to the website, but I do ask them not to report things on Facebook or social media because
Yeah.
we don't track the.
Okay,
the
and
Facebook.
that brings up the public. So does anyone from the public have any comments or questions about this issue? Public? Okay, anyone up there? No? Okay, thank you.
do we even
Then,
have people participating on?
thank you, Chief Canan. Appreciate
you.
your report. And I've been asked if we can take a tiny break. So we will. It'll be about a 3-minute break because I know there's some people that have been waiting. So if we can do that, we'll adjourn for a few minutes. I'll call us back to order. So the next item is the certified local government application status presentation from City Manager John Donlevy regarding the status of the certified local government and to provide direction regarding the pursuit of said designation.
Mayor and Council, at the July 11th meeting, Council asked that we bring this back. So certified local government, the National Historic Preservation Act in 1966 created a number of designations, and one of the outcroppings from that is what they call a certified local government. And in California, it's both a federal and a state designation. Essentially, what CLG is it's a managed preservation program, which is actively managed in a community. It works both in concert with the standards of the state or the National Federal Register and its requirements, the state register and its requirements. And then the third component is that the Department of the Interior, which includes the National Park System and those types of things, all have standards. And essentially CLG is the idea of the locality coming into alignment with the federal, the state, and the Department of the Interior standards when it comes to these things. Through CLG, essentially you have a board or a commission, which becomes an agent for the compliance and alignment of the standards and the requirements for all three. It expands, for the most part, they require that one of the key things is that you expand your local regulations. We have a very robust historic preservation ordinance in our city, but mostly it refers to both preservation and also design. We have a Historic Design Review Commission, which oversees these things. One of the differences with CLG is that it expands into land use, and it expands the role of the commission to include CEQA. It also expands that commission. When you align those policies with the federal, the state, and the interior, one of the things that it does is that one of the things about historic preservation is a trigger for what they call Section 106 consultation. It's the idea that there's a process that goes through. So basically it is alignment of policies, and then you have an agent, which is that board or commission that adheres to the CLG requirements. One of the things that was brought up was funding. What are the upsides on the advantage of doing it? So the state does get some money from the feds, which they allocate into the program. Last year, they funded 6 projects. I tried to find how much they get, and I couldn't find it. One of the things that was interesting is that it's all like secret squirrel stuff. You have to send emails and they'll respond via email, but they don't post any of the things online. Also, one of the things about the funding is that whatever you're doing, it's going to require a pretty good match, which is about 40%. And it requires all projects to do both NEPA and CEQA as part of the process. This has been brought up at the meetings, and I've included in the council. The staff has not been trying to be obstinate in pursuing this. Basically, we've just been following the direction. In 2012, this item, and I included the minutes from the city council. In 2012, this was considered by the city council, and it was rejected in there. In 2020, probably the first direction that I received as city manager here, it was very specific that we did not want to pursue CLG and to let the commission know that. So that's CLG in a nutshell. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions for the council, and I'm open to any direction that you want to give me.
Do we have any questions for city manager?
I'll start out. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I want to touch on what you just mentioned about CEQA NEPA requirements. So if we were to adjust our historic preservation ordinance to go towards the CLG, we now are taking on new requirements from an environmental process that we have to comply with,
So
historic related.
So the alignment is the National Register has requirements, the state, through the State Historic Preservation Office, better known as SHPO, they have requirements. But realize the way that the city sits right now is we have the autonomy to come up with our own. And that's what the city has through our own Historic Preservation Office. The thing that would trump our ordinances would be some type of a federal designation of a property. And probably the best example is the courthouse. That has some pretty serious, the idea that we're going to tear that down probably isn't going to happen. But we, through our own ordinance, we have 2 districts and we have a design district. So basically we have 3 entities. We determine through our own inventory and through our own ordinance how things are dealt with. The difference with CLG, and it gets to your point, does it add additional elements into it? It does, because what it does is it requires you to align your requirements, not as you've defined them, but you align them with the National Register, the State Register, and the Department of the Interior standards. So your autonomy within that is basically those standards that you've aligned with.
And there's an audit done every year by the state, as I believe as well, an annual report that's required from the city, and then an audit that's conducted, supposed to be on an annual basis by the state as well, correct?
Yeah, I tried to find all that information out, but if you want to actually get the guidelines, you have to like request those, and they will send it to you separately. And I just didn't get to that.
That was just information when I was pulled it up. So
Go ahead, Mel.
So one of the other requirements that I remember we've been talking about this forever here at the city. When I was on Planning Commission, we talked about it quite often. We had somebody from SHPO come out and talk to us about the process and the program. One of the things that stuck in my mind was the separate committee that has to be put together. So it can't be a combined Planning Commission, HDRC like we currently operate. It has to be its own standalone committee, as I understand. Is that your understanding as well?
So in looking at it, it says that specifically that you need a CLG board or commission.
Yeah.
And you know what, I apologize. I didn't get that they couldn't be combined. Right now, our Historic Design Review Commission, as it's set up per the ordinance, follows the designation of a couple of folks in combination with the Planning Commission. Right. But it does appear that it requires a separate commission that would review these things in compliance. So, for example, any type of project that would be going, realize that probably the conditions that would be set by the Planning Commission would have to be reviewed separately by the CLG Commission. So it probably would make sense, and I don't want to guess, but it certainly makes sense that there would be separation, because some of the requirements on, for example, this Section 106 consultation and everything is something that has to be separately in any type of quote unquote approved project of some type.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have for now. I do have comments, but
Okay. Any questions here? No?
no, I don't have any questions. I've done a lot of research.
I do have some questions, but I don't, here's my problem here, is I don't think it's fair to have you, this seems like a very complicated ask to get into a certified local government. And I just still can't see the benefits or the benefits of it or the pros and cons. And I don't know if it's worthwhile, if this council wants HDRC to listen from SHPO. I don't know if things have changed. Probably they got worse, more restrictive or less restrictive. I don't know. We're all kind of guessing. I just hate to guess if there's an opportunity out there. No, I'm not saying I'm in favor of it at all, but I just think putting it on you, I saw the pamphlet. One pamphlet was 48 pages. Then there's, it is quite extensive. So I don't know how you feel about having HDRC or the Planning Commission have someone from SHPO come and answer some questions. That's just something I'd like to throw out to the council here.
I would just say, Madam Mayor, with all due respect, this has been a topic that's been, at least I've heard about this and discussed this at length for at least 10 years or.
Well, I guess my question is though, have things changed? Are we just going to be dismissive then? I mean.
In my opinion, and I did some research again. I've done research on this. I with all due respect, I know that Mike Holmes has brought this up on numerous occasions, and we've talked about this at length, even at the Planning Commission and HR and Historic Design Review Commission as well. We have so many priorities with the city right now that I feel that we've done a fine job with regard to historic preservation. And we have our districts, we have our ordinances, we have our commission in place, and we've done a fine job. And we've got other issues right now with fire and public safety and economic development. And I just don't want to take any more of staff's time, even trying to organize another presentation on something that I honestly, at this point, as I'm speaking for myself, I don't support our pursuing this effort right now. It's just when I looked at this, I even spoke to the state historic preservation officer, who is someone that I served with in the Wilson administration.
Mhm.
And there isn't a lot of money even available in these grants. And that's part of the reason why you don't see the dollar amounts on there. And so there is a lot more work involved than the benefit of it. We've got, like I said, I think we've done a great job with the Historic Design Review Commission. When I was on city council originally, we spent so much time developing that and our ordinance and our guidelines. We
Right.
did so much. And so I just don't want to take any more of the city's time on this, because I don't see us moving forward to pursue this. We have so many other things in my.
And your
opinion.
point's well taken. Anyone else? And I'll open it up to the public as well. Mr. Holmes, did you want to say something too?
Or did-
But before I do, would you like to then?
Just really quick, I agree with Councilwoman Don Cavillo. We've got lots of big fish that we need to take care of right now. We've got a lot of things on our plate. We've got a lot of issues around economic development and annexation and all kinds of big planning, transportation. I mean, the one thing that this city has done and is well tended is historic preservation. I feel like the majority of the last general plan covered historic preservation and making sure we know about, I do not worry about anything historic not being preserved in the city of Auburn by anyone. And if it did, I see riots in the streets, to be perfectly honest. So of all the things that I think needs more effort, I don't think this is it.
Okay. And did you want to? Okay, go ahead. Mr. Holmes?
Oh, yes, thank you. First, I want to make a comment when Mike Lukeman was here, that I've been working with the Spring Hill Suites, and they have purchased tickets for the Confluence on demand trips,
Good.
so they can give out to their guests and go down to the Confluence without having to drive their personal vehicles down there. And coming back to the certified local government, I think we all agree that Auburn is a historic city. And the current historic design review session was established 18 years ago. There was a provision in there that the Historic Design Review Commission would seek out and find other sources of grants and so forth that could help the city take care of some of its needs. And I will grant you that some of these grants are not that big, but $25,000, $30,000 could help. And as you are well aware, there are about 15 buildings in the city of Auburn that are on the National Register of Historic Places, this building being one of them, and the old City Hall and the Carnegie Library building are as well. And and there was as some of you know, there was a survey done in the 1960s to identify historic buildings in Auburn and so forth. That is way out of date and needs to be updated. And I think as a certified local government, these funds, grant funds, could be available. Now, I'm not suggesting that this body needs to decide whether to pursue that or not. But what I am asking is that the HDRC be allowed to hear a spokesperson from SHPO and have the opportunity for questions that you have brought up and what people on the HDRC may have to actually get clarification, because I disagree with some of the things that the city manager has said about section 106 and all this other stuff. So anyway, and so what I'm asking is that you allow the HDRC at the next scheduled meeting have a briefing from SHPO and ask some of these questions that maybe need to be asked and answered from Sacramento. And I just want to mention that you talked about how glorious it was to talk to Truckee about their bike thing. And Truckee is a
I know.
certified local government town. So anyway, so that's my request, is that you allow the next scheduled meeting of the HDRC to have a briefing from SHPO and ask any of these questions that might need clarification before we move on and make a final decision whether to pursue it or not pursue it.
And how available are they and SHPO personnel? to
Well,
come
they work every day,
Okay,
but but we need a request from somebody with a auburn.ca.gov email address to make that request, and then it would be coordinated with whenever the next HDRC meeting takes place.
thank you. Anyone else anyone else from the public have anything to address us?
Yes, I
with?
had 10 people here earlier, but they got tired and left.
Well, I see.
Thanks for sticking around, Mike.
And I'm getting cold. This air conditioning is too,
I know. Thank you for waiting. So, thank you.
all right.
Did you have something else?
No,
Okay, you could be seated.
Just so I'm clear that the normally committees don't have to ask us for permission to bring someone in. It's that the committee has not requested to have this person brought in. Mike's the only one on the committee.
That's
who's requested
correct.
That.
The
Okay.
Historic Design Review Commission has stated, and even when I was on it, that the city council provided clear, guidance on this and they didn't want to pursue it. And so, because that's what happened. And then, at the last, one of their meetings, they said the same thing, that unless the city council directs us to look into this,
Because we've directed them
majority.
not to look into
Yeah.
it. So unless we change our mind, they're
That's
not going to
right.
go to it.
That's
Okay, got it.
exactly
That's
right.
why we're talking. Okay.
So, thank you. Okay, would you like to make a comment?
I would. I agree with Councilwoman Dowden Calvillo. This has been talked about a lot over the last 15 years. It's pretty clear in the minutes from the 2012 city council meeting that there was no desires then. Back in 2020, we had a conversation. There was no desires then either. And the idea of adding more regulation and requirements to folks who want to improve a historic building in town, I think just strikes against everything that I'm for. Less regulation, allowing people to get work done. We have HDRC for a reason. And speaking of meetings and the like, adding another committee or board to the roster of committee and boards that we have. I went back and looked, and the HDRC in 2020 met twice. HDRC in 2021 met 3 times. This is for the entire year. And the HDRC in 2022 has only met twice so far this year. So I'm holding to the same position we had in 2020 when we last discussed this. I think it's a waste of time to pursue it any further.
So, my council people here give very good arguments. But I do want to disagree. I think it's precisely because you said they only had a couple of meetings. I think maybe that would be a very good task, is to have them look into the SHPO, listen to the presentation, ask all of the questions that we don't really know the answers to. 2012 was a long time ago. It was a whole different city council, a whole different staff. And we do have a lot on our plate, no doubt. That's a whole nother question. It's a whole nother question. But at this point, even though I am outnumbered and it probably won't happen, my position is that I do think we should have HDRC listen to a presentation from SHPO and have them come up with a report and recommendation.
So Madam Mayor, I wanted to clarify that HDRC did receive a lot of information about this, just, when I was sitting on the planning commission, and when
But
you were
they
on-
never had someone from SHPO come and talk.
No, but we did have mountains of information to review and read. And, like I said, I've done my homework as well. And I respect what you're saying. I do. And historic preservation is very important to me personally, born and raised just like you, generations
Mhm.
here in Auburn. And it's important to preserve that. And I think that we've done a really good job. And this is not an area where we're failing. We have so many things, and even trying to plan a presentation and getting the information together on an issue where it sounds like there's a majority of council members that don't even want to go down this path. I just don't want to take that time to do something that we're
And-
not
and
ultimately going to.
You
do.
stated that.
Yeah.
So it just looks like then that the direction is to just let it drop now. We have basically a 3-to-1 request to have it not be heard by HDRC. So that's what it will be. But thank you anyway. Thank you for bringing that forward. I appreciate it. And we will go to the next issue, which is the designation of voting delegates and alternates. A motion, select a member of the city council to be its voting delegate and up to 2 alternates at the 2022 California of Cities Annual Conference. Oh, Amy?
Mayor and council members, I can provide a little bit of background on this item. Every year at the League of California Cities Annual Conference, the the city council decides if they want to send a voting delegate that will attend the regular session on Friday of the conference and vote on your behalf on resolutions that they are considering. I have in the staff report information that one of the council members is already going to be attending the conference. And the discussion is for you guys to decide who will be the voting delegate.
Well, is the discussion also, so there is a financial impact involved. And so I guess I would like to ask the council, it looks like we're budgeted 1,000 for train and travel, and this will exceed. It'll be 1,200. That'll pay for the registration, air, and hotel. Is that something that we all feel comfortable with?
If I might, we have money throughout the budget for council members to attend the various meetings, including the League of Cities conference. I wouldn't worry about the cost on that. Having a representative at the League of Cities is a very natural occurrence. So I can tell you that there is not any type of
And I'm,
financial.
again, I'm just trying to be transparent and fiscally conservative because we have a lot of people who come and ask us for help. And so we're very discerning. So I want everybody to be transparent and on board with this. So, and I guess the other question is, it sounds like that, have we sent some people in the past to this down in Los Angeles from our city?
I went last year and it was in Sacramento.
Okay.
I believe it's important for us to have a representative there. We don't need to send everyone, but I think it's important for us to at least have one person go there.
And do you know, what will we get out of it? Do you?
Based on what I haven't actually attended myself since I'm fairly new, but it's a conference where it seems like there's representation from numerous cities, if not all of them, throughout the state. And there's different sessions on different things that are impacting cities of the day. And then there's also some votes that are taken on things that can impact cities. And so, I mean, Alice and Matt have both gone, so they can clarify it more than I can. But from what I've heard, it's a very valuable experience.
Okay, then want to make a motion?
Sure. I nominate Councilwoman Dowd Calvillo as our voting delegate.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all,
I'll go ahead and roll call. Councilmember Spokley.
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Mara.
Yes, thank you very much. And that concludes our business report, city manager report.
A couple items really quick. I will tell you that Auburn Transit is very successful, almost too successful on some things. I will tell you that we are running into all the same problems that anybody who tries to employ or operate a business runs into, as far as everything from staffing and hiring. We happen to run a transit service, which many of our operators have to have special licenses and the like. Last week, I can't tell you how proud I am of our Auburn Transit team. They're doing a great job, but there is a lot of burden right now. And just giving a heads up to the council that as we were talking, literally we have gone from ridership of about 12 people a day to just going past 100 in the on-demand. You're seeing literally a transition of people from the fixed service to the on-demand service. So it's just wickedly successful. We have demands for, we can employ a lot of drivers at certain times of the day, dispatching the like. But literally my direction to the staff is to sit down and think about what we need in order to fill the demand, because right now demand is exceeding capacity. So it's a good service, and we'll be bringing back an overall report, which I think the council will be very impressed with. So
Do you know if Menjo's been in touch with the school district about helping with some of that transit for the students trying to get to school?
Actually, one of our solutions to our problem is yes, contacting the school district and see if we can hire all their drivers.
Oh, they don't have any. It's a Durham Transportation is who they used to employ, but
Yes, but we will take anybody if they have a Class B driver's license and can pass our background. But yes, we're talking with them, and the school issue is just a tsunami that we're just looking at that is about ready to take over the island. So
okay.
last week, staff met regarding roadside fire abatement and things we're working on. The whole issue of fire prevention is really ramping up. Auburn Fire and our staff are working very hard on that. So productive meeting on that. Today's staff met. We got a preview of some of the data that's coming in from Beacon Economics, who's bringing in a lot of economic demographic data, and very impressive. The next step is that they are going to be doing outreach and interviews. So if anybody on the council has any folks that you think would be very insightful for them to meet, we're looking for a spectrum of folks, especially from the business community. We're focusing on business economics on things. So some of the best things, and we are outreaching to some of our top business people, is you don't want just good news. As a matter of fact, you don't want the good news. You want the bad news that people can tell you about some of the struggles that they're having. So we, if you have folks that can give really good insight on business economics, would appreciate that. One of the big efforts that we're really pressing on is our capital improvement program. The city council adopted the CIP as part of the budget. One of the things that we're doing is we're aligning revenues. Tonight, the council passed the SB1 resolution. We're starting to get more information, but I can tell you that the CIP will be coming back to the council sometime probably around the mid-year with with our revenue projections and probably a pretty good update of actual capital projects. As we start moving into some of the asset management stuff, we're going to do that with the CIP. And then finally, this Thursday, we are the host for the Placer Electeds Dinner. It'll be at the fairgrounds, and our speaker will be Pride Industries, born in Auburn, the #1 employer of disabled persons in the world. And they're going to come in and talk a little bit about the innovation. It was interesting talking with Beacon today because we were talking about various companies. And they said, well, how did they come here? Well, they were born in Auburn. That's where they came from. Mm-hmm. And the amount of innovation that's come out of this community is very impressive. So we decided that we would really highlight Pride simply because they are so active, not only on the national level, but within the region. So I'll see everybody on Thursday.
Thank you. Committee reports? Yeah, did you have something?
All of my meetings in July were canceled, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Lucky you. Okay, and Rachel?
I don't have any.
Okay, and
I do have a couple. I just wanted to announce that the Endurance Capital Committee of the World has been very busy with lots of endurance activities here in town. Yes, the summer. So they are out there doing their job promoting Auburn as the Endurance Capital of the World. I wanted to also talk about Pioneer Community Energy. We had an update about the enhanced power line safety settings. And this is when PG&E turns off the power within 1/10 of a second when a fault such as a tree limb comes into contact with a power line. When that's detected, they turn off the power. And in El Dorado, actually, never mind about El Dorado, because Pioneer serves both El Dorado and Placer County, we got statistics for both. But for Placer County, we had 14 outages that affected 10,109 customers. And the power was out for 89.7 hours. So in El Dorado County, it was out for about 90.4 hours and they had 26,000 customers affected. And so what Pioneer has said is that we'll be writing a letter to PG&E asking them to develop some standards like they did with the power shutoff, emergency shutoffs. We haven't seen as many of those because they've gone to the EPSS system instead. But in in your neck of the woods, South Auburn, you experienced several of these EPSSs, I believe. So at least Daniel was, I think, affected. Maybe not you, but Daniel had talked about that. So we are looking into that and asking PG&E to develop standards for that. SHAC met last week and they're working on their guidelines for the tiles. So we hope to have the changes to the enabling ordinance soon so that we can talk about the criteria and the application that's utilized for that purpose. And then PCTPA, we didn't meet this. And so that's all that I have to report.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I met with Mosquito Vector and then did the Thursday trek up to Truckee, and that was it. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting. All right. Thank you.
All right.